Welcome to Perspectives from the Void. Today our topic is addictions versus habits. Kind of breaking down like when does one become another? Beneficial addictions. Somebody could say somebody's like a workaholic and they're like, well, I'm doing this for a benefit of getting paid. Somebody's saying like, oh, you addicted to going to the gym. And you're like, well, I'm doing it for the benefit of gaining muscle. Some people say you're addicted to a craft. You say I'm doing it as a benefit for that. Do we think that the difference between addictions versus a habit is just like the amount of harm that is caused on somebody? Kind of similar to like a mental illness. Something might be considered like a habit, or does it become debilitating? Is that when it becomes an addiction?
Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure if I know exactly what the difference is between an addiction and a habit, because addiction sounds like it has negative connotations and a habit sounds like it has positive connotations.
Or maybe neutral connotations. If you think of it like the epistemology, philosophical meaning, or like the contextual meaning of the word habit, habitual is something that we do. It is routine. It's almost like it has some normalcy to it. You know what? I have a habit of waking up in the morning. Addiction maybe is like
you won't say I'm addicted to waking up in the morning.
I mean, but in a way you are though. But it's almost like, but it's an involuntary action. I think addictions in general are harder to quit, are a lot more powerful and more passionate. An addict is addicted to drugs, but I have a habit of playing Warzone when I'm supposed to be doing homework, or has had an addiction. But in my mind, I know that I can stop. At least that's what I'm telling myself. So it's a habit.
Like unconscious, isn't it?
Yeah, like subconscious, something that you just do. Yeah, like habit. Yeah, an addiction is almost really intentional. Whatever is our daily routine is more subconscious in a certain sense of like we don't necessarily even got to think about it because it's something that we just do. So maybe like besides waking up, taking a shower, shitting, pissing, that's like an involuntary motion that you have to do. But maybe you have to watch TV, or maybe you have to walk the dog. No, not just for dogs to use the bathroom, but because you need to get outside.
The thing that makes me see that habits is more neutral is that it has to have another describer attached to it to say bad habits. There are good habits, there are bad habits. You don't really hear that same type of language being used with addictions. You don't really hear the term, oh, it's a good addiction. It's a bad addiction. People hear addiction, they're already assuming that it's got some negative connotations to it. I think that is kind of a good point about like the subconscious versus the conscious. But I think that also can be influenced by things like, I don't know if y'all heard the thing where it's like it takes 14 days to build a new habit or something like that. It might be more, I don't remember.
I think you're 21.
21.
Who the fuck is counting?
It's not going to be the same for everybody.
That's what I said, but apparently
it takes some time for at least most people to kind of do something consistently enough that it just becomes part of their life.
I see what you're saying, yeah. And a measuring part it can be subjective. So when I think of my own personal stuff, because that's the best way that I can form it, when I think of like my habits, what is my personal habits? What are my personal addictions? I will say a habit that I'm working on is going to the gym. And also, I want it to be an addiction as well, because the results that it can get to me and what it does for me is super important. So habits and addictions can be positive and exist in the same place simultaneously. Obviously, I think it's about balance. Oh, maybe balance is a real key element that we got to think about when it comes to addictions and habits too. Because we think of addictions like, well, you do this a lot. This is more volume.
What I was saying earlier was it just being debilitating. It's something where like it gets in the way of what you want to be or what you want to do. If it's just volume, it could be volume in proportion to what social expectations is. Because I was going to say at first like volume working, right? How many hours you have to work. That's a pretty big volume of time if you would translate that to many other things. Like if you're working out 30 hours a week, pretty much everyone's going to be like, yeah, that's a lot. Like, are you getting paid for this? You're doing something crazy with it, but versus like maybe like social expectation of it. Yeah, I do think it's how much it gets in the way of what you want to do.
I think sometimes habits can even get in the way of certain things we want to do. I feel like right now, when people in general think of the concept of addiction and habits, at least I know I have this tendency, and what I have observed from other humans is that we have this tendency to try to put a moral evaluation on the concept of addiction and habits based off of results that it brings. So I was addicted to this, and now I'm fucking homeless. Or I made a habit of letting this person keeps crossing my boundaries. now I'm going through this spiritual abyss and I'm not in a place where I want to be because I kept letting it happen, which was a habit. So, but you can flip those around and turn it into positive things. So I think the moral evaluation is when we get into muddy waters, even though we need to sometimes to know what's right or wrong.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think it's also the way that people describe themselves. They use different language to try to paint a picture of themselves. So you can see this in, sometimes I'll see it in my job where people are really corporate in how they're talking. And they want to paint this picture of everything's fine, everything's okay, we're happy, we're good. You know, like,
You're
just,
not fucking good.
you're not, but we can't tell you that. Because we can't confront. Or it's kind of like how you can twist language into being something that can change your perceptions of it.
Which is epistemology and terminology.
Because there's also a lot of addictions that people have that they can just kind of write off as like, it's just something I do. It's just a habit.
Can I ask you guys a question? What are some things you guys think that you are personally addicted to? Like 2 things, and I'll try to name one for myself.
One would be TV, watching a show, playing a video game, sitting on my phone, which is basically a TV, and watching YouTube, which is the same activity, consuming entertainment as one. And that kind of feeds into, I was going to say like inactivity / not wanting to do as many things. And I realized that's not really an addiction as much as that's a symptom of an addiction. Sometimes can be weed, the amount that I'm using and the frequency. It really depends on how I'm managing it and if I'm letting it get to that level or not.
Yeah, bro. For me, I can easily say those same things, but let me be more creative. Leveling out the drinking, because I'm hearing that it can help me lose weight too. So we're trying to balance that out more, put more release on that. Because I don't need to drink every day, which I demonstrated to myself. I think the key was when I was drinking a lot, if y'all remember, like I was actually, I still like to drink clearly, but I wasn't where I was X amount of time ago. And I didn't even realize that, damn, this is happening a lot. Do I even need to do this? And symptoms was drinking until I got sick, throwing up and shit. Shit was terrible, bro. I'm like, why the fuck am I always throwing up? I didn't know how to balance the shit out, bro. I'm up there like the fucking dog eating the food and throwing it up, about to eat it again and shit. So yeah, the drinking is one.
So puke and rally, take another shot and I'll balance myself out.
Real shit. And then I guess like another thing is I always get this psychological moment where I want to reset. Where it's like, okay, it's time to fucking do it. It's your time, bro. Turn off the social media, ignore all these bitches, put your head down, work on your business, work on your schoolwork so you can finish these 11 to 14 credits. Get in the gym even harder. Go on a bike ride, save your money, put my head down and really do this shit. And then I let go of the rope gradually. But I keep trying, which I think is a good thing though. Because I'm not quitting. I could easily quit.
Like the same with, he said, weed, video games, it can be eating, porn.
Yeah, you struggle with porn, that seem like the type to struggle with porn. Put you on a pedestal.
I think a lot of people have porn addiction, to be honest, or struggles with porn.
Question. I always find the person where guys are in a relationship struggling with like porn when you have a girlfriend. Especially if you have adequate amount of sex. But I do understand if they get old and shit. Sometimes you want something different. I don't know. But personally, I never felt like I struggled with that before with like Molly 1 or 2 times. But we got it in check because I was head over heels. So it was like, okay, I don't do anything. I would even manage this addiction. I should have told her this though. Bitch, I've been watching throw fuck porn long before you got here. And I'll be watching throw fucking porn long after you get here.
One thing that really feeds addictions is the ease of access. How easy is it just to make it happen? I think like an example I've used for this is when I had Dab Pen. It was a lot easier to keep hitting that shit and hitting that shit and hitting that shit all day versus now I'm gonna roll up one joint tonight and it's gonna be a decent joint, but like that's it. That's all I'm doing today.
Instead of negotiation with yourself, you're making a negotiation.
By taking those steps, I can't just like snap my fingers and have something to smoke right away. It's going to take a little bit of time. It's time for me to think, do I really want to do this? Did I keep this promise to myself? In the same way, the most harmful things are when it's so easily available. And I think that's one thing with porn is that it don't take shit to pull up a website and type in the first thing and you can get there in 30 seconds.
So delayed gratification then is what you're pointing out. Like we're not getting that immediate release because it's not as available compared to certain things.
I think more specifically, it's there's less time that you can say no.
Yeah, delay.
There's less time for you to be like, hey, I don't want to do this.
You can
right
actually
now.
think about it, but so it is still delayed though.
Yeah.
You know,
it is, yeah.
like it gives you that time to not cave in to our immediate, passionate, whimsical whims of the flesh and inclination of our desires. So maybe it's about decisions. It is about decisions. You know, like the habit we make is the decisions that we do. Like this is one quote that a habit is a collection of your decisions. Like, and it's about the ones that comes up the most. What do we do every day? We make a decision, but still, what do we do every day? And we consciously choose, for the most part, what the fuck we're going to do. So it's action in a way, right? I'm trying to break it down now.
There's shit that you can control. There's shit that is outside your control. But I think especially like out of the things that you can control, out of the things that you can look at and be like, okay, what decisions am I making? What am I really trying to do? You also said something, that kind of disappearing aspect. I'm just going to try to put my head down and focus.
I know, right?
That's kind of missing from today's world because we're always connected. And I read this article the other day. They were talking about how AOL Messenger used to be. Some old shit, right? But on there, if you're not on, it would be like a message, oh, they're not by the computer right now, or something like that. It wasn't like a block where you send some shit and then it says you blocked. It was just some shit where it's, hey, you can still put something here, but they not here. They not going to see this right now. So I don't have to be on at 24/7. I don't have to always be there ready to talk to somebody. I can just be like, you know what? No, this is my focus time.
It finds you whenever it finds you. Maybe distractions may be linked to addictions and habits. Maybe it is about focus. If we can agree that the concepts of decision making is involved with habits and addictions, then we also know that decisions is the root of action. There's something that we're doing that creates this addiction. It's something that's ongoing. And I'm trying to really think of it from like a psychological standpoint, because I'm realizing that I used to tap into my will emotionally, and that has gotten me to a lot of good places and that got me to a lot of shitty places. Now I want to really tap into my will psychologically, rational decisions that I'm doing that I know internally, like consciously, and I'm thinking like, damn, what is the best for me right now? Should I down some jack and play Warzone until 3 o'clock in the morning? Or should I actually go to bed early, go for a run, do a paper? Do we think of that? I maybe like the emotional part of us is so linked to our decision making. It's like if decision had an ear, fucking emotion will have a closer mouth to it compared to our psychological, our rational thought of it.
Looking at it psychologically, it really starts to kind of go into what is behind addictions. A lot of times there are things that will create certain addictions, like different points in your life, different experiences that you're kind of going through. And I think we can see this even just for an example about deaths of despair. That term where it's either you dying from an overdose, you dying from alcoholism, or dying from suicide. There are certain things that in your life, whether that's like poverty or that's like your mental health, or that's needing to feel connected to your community, or needing to have fulfillment and purpose, entertainment, emotional needs. And I think that they feed into addictions because the brain wants to solve things. And it's like, I'm missing this. Give it to me. Give it to me. Give it to me. Instead of sometimes you can't get it through other means. And sometimes it's just you're not working to get that in other means.
Yeah, it's something you said, like the brain is trying to solve something. It's like if the brain is designed to solve problems, right, or find solutions or to take care of itself, thinking about the nature of the brain, then it is forever trying to fill the void. However, I have found out in my life experience that sometimes there are some things that I just couldn't have, or not be able to have closure to, or not be able to have the answers to, and I just had to fucking live with it. The same roots of desiring those voids filled is the same psychological roots that's based in our habits and addictions, which is why I'm really trying to investigate my psychological will. I'm thinking about these two roads. I know what these roads mean to me. I know that if I do this, I'm going to end up here. If I do this, I'm going to end up there. Simple as that, right? What am I going to do? Can I turn at. But addictions and habits, which is more comfortable. Have y'all ever had that voice in y'all head, bro? Like, for example, when you running and that voice tell you to stop running, like, it's okay.
Last night,
You know,
literally.
you quit, right? Like, bro, that is part of ourselves, and that's probably your brain taking care of itself, saying, okay, you can rest, it's okay. And bro, it's a very soothing voice. But there's another voice in there too, and that motherfucker's not as loud for a lot of people. But that's the voice we listen to and say, no, keep going. You can do it. Find out what's on the other side. Maybe habits and addictions is based in fucking safety. In like a certain way, like a psychological, spiritual safety for people.
Safety and security. But that voice is always you.
Yeah.
You said there's one voice, but the other voice, but it's you.
Yes, but it's multiple voices for me, I think. I'm not trying to sound crazy. Like, yes.
What voice are you feeding? What voice are you starving?
Yeah, exactly.
What are you having? If you have two voices in there,
Yes.
are you feeding that voice that's saying, it's all good, I can just rest?
You know
I don't
what?
gotta push it there.
You know what? I can roll this blunt. No, I can take a Zaddy. It's all good. I'm at work, but you know what? It's all good. I can take a fucking edible.
And sometimes you need to listen to that shit. Because people don't listen to their bodies and they overwork themselves. They get injured. They fatigue shit. You know what I'm saying?
Like, sometimes the other voice that's like push through, there's something on a different side. It's like that striving safety voice. How about that? There's a striving voice and there's a safety voice. Safety voice is a voice that people are most intimate with, in my opinion. That striving voice, that motherfucker to tell you to risk it a little bit, in a certain way, or push harder. Like, I'm be honest, that's a dangerous voice too, because like I'm trying to remember which voice did I listen to when we had pulled up on those niggas telling me in 2017 over my ex bitch, bro. What voice was that? Was that safety? Or addictions, habits, losing a girl, couldn't take it anymore? Or was it the striving, like it was something I gotta prove? Most likely safety, even though I went out of fuck. Bro, it comes out in different ways. I don't know, bro.
What is a workaholic? But that striving brain only being the one fed. Somebody who just, they only are working on something. They never actually are enjoying life. They don't have balance. They don't have any other perception. You might need to feed that voice in your head more than another for a time. If you're going through like something that's a crazy event, it's not really in your control. And sometimes you've got to be like, you know what? I just got to relax for a minute. Got to recognize what's in and what's not in my control. And sometimes that's where you got to listen to that other voice too. I think balance is
definitely part of it.
But I think today's world, it's definitely shifted towards the chill back. We don't need to do nothing.
Oh, definitely, because we're connected. No, never before in a time in human history has there been more distractions, more noise, more clutter in our psychological and spiritual basis. Make no mistake about this, gentlemen. We are at war. These people will see us have nothing. I used to laugh at those conspiracy theorists and niggas, bro. The revolution won't be televised. So I'm like, well, it looks like it's televised. Maybe being connected to so many people with this much volume is part of it. I'm not saying that we're not meant to be connected, but particularly in the cities, bro, there's a different type of like psychology you take on when being around X amount of humans compared to maybe out in the country. The nearest neighbor's like a fucking 200 yards away type shit. And social media has made it where people are steadily connected. That's why I feel the urge every fucking X amount of time to unplug from everything, bro. But I never unplug for long. But I really just want to unplug for everything, put my head down, work on my purpose like I need to, come back when I'm ready to come back. Because there is a lot of noise. Focus may be the savior when it comes to habits and addictions. Because if that focus is aimed in the right place, the most just place, then those two concepts can be used for beautiful things.
Maybe a focus day would be a good idea. One day, no phone, no smoking, no drinking, no TV. This is just my day where it happens every week. And I know what's going to happen on this day. I know what's set up for me. I know what promises I got to keep. I'm just here. Motherfuckers know not to hit me up on Wednesday, Tuesday.
And if I do, I just won't answer.
Yeah, I'll hit you up the next day.
I hit you up when I hit you.
But then it's also that balance of still being connected. As far as like living around other people, that's something that for 1,000 years plus humanity has kind of done. I feel like that isn't as much of an issue personally, although for some people it could be. It is more just that constant always need for connection. And even when you're in a city, you can have your apartment, you can close that door, and you're not in a city, you in a one person area.
What do you mean, a one person area?
If you home alone in your apartment, you close the door, the city ain't coming into your apartment.
Okay, to a certain extent, right, but we can clearly hear the neighbors. We can hear my neighbors, bro. We're out there, got some land to yourself. You just hear the ambience of the waters running, the fucking animals. Out in the country, bro, it's a different type of psychological type of feel, having that, I don't want to say solitude, but space, at least from my personal experience. Because when I close my door in my apartment, yes, it's my safe space, this is my home. But I'm well aware that I'm in an apartment complex with 40 other individuals. We're right on top of each other in a certain way. You can think alone, because most people, they're not in your mind, they're not your friends, right? They're just strangers. Everybody's mind their business. But I don't know, it's just like when you know that they're not there.
I don't get what's the difference.
What do you mean?
Like they're there, but they're not.
They're there.
Yeah, what is them being there?
I mean, not nothing necessarily wrong, but I'm talking from like a psychological aspect of having open space out in the country compared to being in an urban area where there's hundreds of thousands of people. Yes, they're not in our actual apartment, right? We know that, but we can hear them. No problem with it. But what if you want ultimate focus? That's why I like going out to the woods for ultimate focus, because there's no other X amount of humans around besides the people that you bring with. And that's a different type of feeling, bro.
I think there's a balance. Certain people are going to be more predisposed to certain areas because certain personalities can function better in certain things. In people who are like living more rural, there is those advantages, but then you can also look on the other side and say that there isn't as often a stronger community connection or like social one. I think that's the reason why a lot of the meth epidemics and the opiate epidemics is popping up in a lot of those areas the strongest, because there is that disconnection from things. There isn't that.
They just bored, so like, fuck it, we're going to do some meth.
It's that, and it's also when things are less concentrated, there is less economic power in an area, just because of things be less concentrated when it's so spread out in order to have individual areas. And I feel like the results of that has decimated a lot of small town economies. That's a whole nother topic in there, because we're talking about just mental perspectives. There are different things that can benefit from different things. So a lot of people will look at some things and be like, I don't always want the city noise, but sometimes I can look at that as an inspiration. You can sit back and you can watch life happen for a little bit, in the same way as you can sit back in nature and watch nature happen.
I used to tell my friends I couldn't go to sleep unless I heard at least one ambulance.
Oh, one siren.
Like, I feel at home.
Damn. Born in the city, born in the Matrix.
You were talking about the void, in a sense, kind of trying to fill emptiness. That kind of puts me back to a mindset of hearing a lot of things that personally the Christianity I experienced was teaching about. You are always going to have this void inside of you, a God-shaped hole.
Oh, shit.
And it's like you're feeling this emptiness because that's where you should be putting your spirituality. That's where you should be putting your focus on God. That's where you should be looking at as He's the answers. It's hiding it from the emptiness of existence. It's hiding things from having to really find meaning for yourself and find purpose for yourself and legacy for yourself. And I think that's why a lot of people who are not religious anymore, I think a lot of them go through a nihilist phase, because you go from this perspective of God's controlling everything, so God is providing meaning through a lot of things. And now when that's taken away, what is even meaning now? And in a way, you kind of have to reject it by saying, like, not everything is for some crazy plan. Not everything is super predetermined. But then you have to look at that other perspective and saying, well, the actions I take, they still have meaning. If I kill somebody, that has meaning for a lot of people in their life. If I do somebody dirty, that has a lot of meaning in their life. If I can put on somebody, that has meaning in their life. If I can be successful in myself and be able to be in a position where I want to be, that has meaning for myself. It's kind of a process to kind of build that.
You had me at hiding things from the emptiness of existence. Because when you really digest what that sounds like, at least objectively or subjectively, hiding things from the emptiness of existence. People need to know the answer for a lot of things. People need closure. People need to fill the void. And if God is that magical key that unlocks that lock, how very fortunate, because it is of the infinite. So it doesn't even got to be necessarily like a particular religion here, but that spirituality part must be fulfilled maybe in a certain way, where you connect to something that's bigger than yourself, something that is so infinite that you can't really correspond to actual human anthropomorphic meaning to it, because beyond human conception. That's why space interests me so much, because I feel like the answers is literally right there in our face. But we're on a prison on this ball trying to decide how the fuck we even got here and where we're going to go. And not just collectively, individually. It's like a tree with so many different branches of leaves, so many different details that spread out amongst each other. And naturally, you want to think that meant something. Intelligent design. You know what? There's a purpose of why I'm here. How could we be here and something doesn't have a plan for us? But me personally, I got a plan without that. And a lot of people do, because if God exists, then cool. If he doesn't or she doesn't, then cool too. I believe in something bigger than me, the universe. But with that being said, I'm not going to claim to have all the answers. And I think that's one of the most humble things that someone can ever do. Not taking shots at Christians and Muslims and Buddhists, whoever the fuck. But the person who can admit that they don't know the answers, that is so spiritually humbling.
If you find meaning, morals, if you become a good person through religion, you're positively impacting. I don't really give a fuck. I think it's a good thing, because if it's something that's motivating you, that's good. Some people can be motivated by their family. Some people can be motivated just for money. If you think, if I got to have good actions to please a God, well, hey, you know what? All power to it. I think a lot of things that people will use is like bigger than themselves. It's a word that we talked about last week, and that's legacy. And I think that when that can kind of replace that spiritual itch sometimes. When you feel fulfilled, when you feel like you're going towards something and you feel like there's a purpose for what you're doing, that's kind of what faith does in a lot of times too, is it fills that purpose with something. That's why a lot of people who are football players, you know, who peak early and shit, and then they retire, and then they're like, well, fuck, this was my legacy. My legacy is complete. My purpose is complete. Now what? And it's hard for them to get out of that shit. Shit, winning time. Coach Riley. He's just trying to run the games and shit, because he's just like, man, like, well, I don't know what I'm doing. I just want to be connected to the thing that I know, the thing that brought me purpose, fulfillment. But he can't play no more in the league.
Is that even a such thing as a completed legacy or completing your purpose? To me, it sounds like that should be something that's everlasting, ongoing.
Yes.
Not something that has a finish line.
Yes.
But at least from my perspective.
Finish line says it's not infinite because it ends. But if it doesn't end, it's infinite. Infinite is coincides with God, deity. So if we chase after the things that provokes our infinite inclinations of what is our purpose and like the most good in the sense of like our lives, then isn't that the ultimate endeavor?
The people who are going into these highly competitive things that are very rewarding, like somebody who's playing sports, like somebody who does music, like somebody doing something where they just know that everything that I think about is going towards this goal. People are so motivated by one goal, by one legacy, by one way that the world is viewing them, that when they can't produce on that level anymore, they really have to start to change their outlook and change their goals and add perspectives and add legacy. But they're going to look at that and be like, I've worked for 15 years to make the fucking league, to make the NBA.
Hell,
you know, and then I worked in there for 10 years in that shit, 15 years.
I did music for 15 years before I even got my shot. Fucking, I worked at the office pouring coffee until I got a chance to talk with the VP. Now I got an official position.
Mm-hmm.
I fucking was 300 pounds for 3 to 4 straight years before I got back to where I wanted to get to. I fucking was in school for 5 years to get a 2-year degree, different academic probations and breaks just to get this piece of paper.
I worked 40 years for one company and retired at 65. Everybody kind of reaches that point at one point or another, if they live that long, that what they define themselves as, what their self-image was. I remember I was even looking at this in your textbook. It was like you ask yourself, what am I 5 times? And you let that fill in your self-image. And a lot of people will fill their self-image primarily with things that they do a lot of their time as. And so a lot of people, that's working.
Habits.
Habits right there.
It comes back around, but
so when that habit is taken from you,
it gets taken. But our habits must be things that's somewhat infinite. Then that's so much more spiritual, more bigger purpose, bigger fulfillment. What are we doing that's going to bring us a certain type of delayed gratification of a bigger thing than ourselves?
And I get that, but I also think that balance is important because, like you said, if somebody retires from playing football, that doesn't mean their legacy has to be done. It just means their football legacy might be done.
Yeah, legacy transforms.
But that doesn't mean that you can't find new purpose. That doesn't mean that you find new self-actualization. You find new meanings and new expressions of yourself. And I feel like when people are so limited to only defining themselves as one thing, they're very, very vulnerable to having their sense of self and their sense of meaning fucked with.
Your identity is supposed to be multifaceted.
I think more and more these days, people are becoming very siloed in their identity.
Oh, of course they are, bro. Like, this might sound egotistical of us being, from what like generation are we from? Is I said this is Z generation, X generation. Are we like millennials?
I think
are we fucking millennials?
I think we millennials.
Because niggas talk shit about millennials all the time. And you know what? I think we got a good handle on this shit compared to a lot of people when it comes to our identity and our sense of self. I don't want to speak for you guys, but I'm just confident in us because we don't see ourselves just as one role.
1980 to 1995 is millennials. 1995 to 2010 is Generation Z. We right on the borderline.
I'm millennial. I was born in 94.
In between generations. Because it looked like it was just 15 years. I feel like in one way, something that defines a generation is their access to technology.
Oh yeah, bro. Definitely. Technology molds that. If people in the 1920s saw just this scene now, it wasn't even, and slavery was outlawed, but just like this TV, this weird graphic design going. You got a white guy and two African looking fellows in the same room casually talking with these weird metal things and computers that show screens and what can search up the internet. Like, what? The internet, bro? These niggas weren't thinking about the internet, bro. The internet has literally changed human consciousness itself. And that's what we're not talking about. That's why big tech, bro, needs to be regulated in that sense, definitely. Because you don't just have a fucking product. Cigarettes kill you physically over time, your lungs shit right to smoke. But the internet literally changes your psychological patterns. And that has to be taken very seriously. Don't shadow ban us.
Even just kind of doing this conversation and just like thinking about like, what are your addictions? And being honest with yourself, even if you don't think you have any, but if you had to pick 2 or 3 things that you were the most addicted to, then you don't have to worry about qualifying, is it an addiction, is it not?
Yeah, you just know.
Just know what are the most. Call it a habit if you want to color it a little bit towards your preference. Really just kind of examine of what are the things that are most integral to my life that I don't want to give up.
My honesty is one of them. I'm not going to say I'll never lie because I definitely have. But I feel like when it comes to people I love and care about, I really go out my way to be open and honest with them in conversation. I'm not saying that there's things about myself that I don't necessarily bring out to you guys, but I try to balance it out. But my honesty is one of, another one that I don't want to give up is my awareness. Nobody's aware like I'm aware of myself. So I'm really becoming more in tune with myself. And it's been a pleasure to even talk about habits and addictions and just harping back to the moments where I really struggle and still having my continuous battle with. So being aware psychologically, emotionally, spiritually of these things so I can recognize these habits and addictions and aim them for things of infinite greatness when it comes to compassion towards people I love and striving. I know it's all balanced. So, and with that being said, we are
Perspectives from the Void.